Welcome to the Cardano Chat Show, where we talk with various people and projects being built on the Cardano blockchain. Super excited to have a very special guest, John O'Connor from Africa. He's pretty much heading up all of the operations for Cardano in Africa, for IOHK in Africa, and to really help build out the mission of Cardano, which is bringing economic identity to the billions of people that lack it. This episode is brought to you by Grow Your Stake. It's our stake pool, and we are hoping to generate traffic to our stake pool. We basically, it's a mission-driven pool, and we help contribute to Drop for Drop charity, which builds water wells for communities in Africa. We've already built one well, and very, very excited about that. So thank you to all you delegators, because you're helping to contribute to bringing clean water to people that have typically had to walk for 2 hours a day to get it. And so that's a powerful thing. It's life-changing for some of them. So thank you for our delegators there. Just a reminder, the way that pool structure works is you still get the same rewards that you would normally get, around 5%, as any other stake pool. However, the rewards that we get for being the pool operators, we've chosen to give 100% of our profits to Drop for Drop charity. So that's how that works. You get the double benefit of knowing you're contributing to a good cause while also getting more rewards on your ADA. All right, here we go. All right, welcome to Cardano Chats. Today we have John O'Connor. John, how's it going?
Going very well, Josh. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to be on the show. I'm sure you've had a busy Monday, a lot going on there in Africa. And for those of us that don't know who you are, do you mind telling us a little bit about your role with IOHK?
Sure. So I'm John O'Connor. I head up the Africa business for Input Output and for Cardano. I've been with the project about 5 years now, starting off at the Cardano Foundation, where I led the strategy, and then I shifted over 3 years ago to set up the African operations and moved here to Ethiopia from the UK.
Oh, wow. So I didn't realize you had made a move to make this happen. How's that been for you? Big life transition.
Yeah, you know, my model on this kind of stuff is that it's not super helpful to think about it too much. That you should just, get a plane ticket, fly, and, figure things out as they come. But in general, my experience has been fantastic. I've absolutely loved the move and had very little negative to say, actually. So it worked out well for me.
That's great, man. Well, you're key to the Cardano mission of what's really happening in Africa and bringing economic identity to the billions of people that don't have it. So we're super excited to have you on the show, very much for that reason. And it sounds like you're a true entrepreneur. You just decided to move to Africa and make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice way of describing it. Foolhardy is another one. But, I think that, for me, the reason why I got involved in blockchain and crypto was always about this concept that you said of enabling economic identity. And, the places where this is needed the most aren't in the US or aren't in the UK. So if you're really trying to drive towards that goal, then I don't see any plausible way that you can do it without actually having, people in the countries that you're professing to help. So yeah, I think it's a requirement, actually, rather than an optional added extra.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Good call with that. So how are things going? What's new since the Africa project and everything that you guys announced there? How should we start, man? Tell us what's new and how are things going with? Well, let's just go ahead and start with World Mobile. How are things going with the World Mobile project?
Yeah, so that's actually a really exciting project for me for a number of reasons. So on the one hand, they've got their licenses, they're starting to import equipment coming in from Dubai. So the actual operational of that project has actually already started. They're also doing a TGE in a few weeks, which I think is well subscribed. So I think it's very exciting on a project level. What's also exciting is, you may have seen, but the president of of Tanzania has actually become incredibly positive about crypto. So there's some news over the weekend that Tanzania, much like El Salvador, is looking to start accepting crypto from a regulatory perspective. So sometimes stars just align nicely, actually. And I think that the World Mobile project is one where the stars seem to be doing that, an increasingly beneficial regulatory environment, about to start actually rolling out for the initial pilot in Zanzibar. Cardano's tech is coming along nicely, so we can start looking at doing all of these cool open finance, real finance applications towards the end of the year. So far, things are going well. I mean, the reality of deploying any project at scale is always challenging, but for the moment, it seems to be, it's a bit of a charmed life at the moment. So no complaints.
Man, that's fantastic. Good news all the way around. So what about the deal with the educational, bringing on the students onto the platform and the identities with Atala Prism? How's that going? 5 million students, by the way. Yeah.
5 million students and 750,000 teachers as well onboarded into the platform. So this pod's actually really exciting, obviously, since it's the largest project that we're doing by numbers. So our teams are fully deployed now on building the code for that and delivering what we're contractually obliged to do with the ministry. What's been really exciting for me personally is off the back of this announcement, we're seeing very strong interest for similar products all across the continent and actually beyond. So when you're starting to build something and design something, you always feel a little bit like, is this crazy? Do people really want this? So having a single deal is obviously validating about that. But actually, being approached by ministers and senior government stakeholders from 5 other countries on the continent who say, we also really need the solution. It sort of validates that, no, you're not crazy, that there is a real need for this kind of thing. That adds a lot of value to the countries that we're talking about. So that's actually just been very nice. It's nice when the strategy seems to work, and you see the fruition of that effort.
Yeah. Have you seen anything new unfolded? Any new people getting involved as this has been announced?
Yeah, so I think within Ethiopia, what we've seen is that there's been interest from other government ministries and other government officials saying, oh, this is really interesting. So we've got a digital identity solution that's actually being rolled out. Oh, I actually have a need for a digital identity solution within my remit as well. Or, hey, okay, maybe you can tell me a little bit more about the other sides of blockchain rather than just identity exchanges and that kind of thing. So it's been nice to see that digital identity can be a bridgehead into some of the other products that IO is looking to build and deploy. And I think we've seen that interest come good actually post this first implementation. So just to sort of reiterate, Rome wasn't built in a day, and the kind of things that we're talking about, these are big projects. You don't do them overnight. But I've seen a strong interest following up from this deal, and I can see the progression of steps which enable us to go, add on that payments, and then after payments we can maybe start doing loans and insurance. So we seem to be progressing in the right direction down that cascade.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people may not realize how long the sales cycle can be for dealing with. I mean, an enterprise business is always a huge sales cycle, but then you're talking about dealing with governments. So can't imagine. I mean, I obviously you guys have been working on that one deal for 3 to 5 years, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first deal, the Ministry of Education, was around 3 years worth of effort. I'm not sure this would be smart if it was going to be as long for every additional instance, but that's not how things work. Getting the first one is always the hardest. You're dealing a lot with education from first principles. Okay, well, what's blockchain? How does identity fit into that? Why is it better than a centralized system? Well, what's the upside from the minister's perspective and the Ministry of Education's perspective? What's the upside from the user's perspective? What does a commercial model look like for this? So you're starting from zero, but after you've done it once, it happens a lot quicker. Now we have essentially a product around education. We've got the sales collateral around it. We can show demos. Very soon we're going to be implementing this live in Ethiopia, which also means we can have people fly in and actually look at it and see it on the ground. So that presumably shortens your sales cycle. Seeing is believing. So if people can come and see millions of users getting from this, then that's going to bring more credibility than any amount of PowerPoint decks or Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, absolutely. It's creating some credibility and some momentum, I would think. So is there it sounded like you were saying there is some new deal flow potentially coming from this?
Yeah, in my strategy sort of going forward, I've tried to create a place for input output going forward when it comes towards the adoption side. I'm really trying to figure out where is a useful place for us to sit, because we're building a platform and we want private sector, we want companies to start building on our technology and developing solutions. So what's IO's role in that? And I've seen our role as doing these sort of like big ticket deals to be able to bring credibility for the technology. So the kind of deals that I look at are typically a minimum of 1 million users, which means that currently at the space, I'm looking at a lot of government engagements as well as large private sector companies. But, in current deal flow, we've got about 10 deals of this scope, in the flow. Sure, some of these won't come through. Sure, some of them will take years. For some of them, we may have to wait for our technology to evolve a bit more. But I can say, there's no lack of appetite out there. People are interested in the solutions we're building. They see the value for themselves and for their countries. So it's really about us sort of scaling up to meet that demand, but also make sure, even if we're not going to be the ones to build that we're learning about these business requirements and these use cases and feeding them directly into our product roadmap, so that as each new iteration of Cardano is released onto the market, it's useful and it's fit for purpose and it's solving the challenges that people are asking for. So that's sort of the role I see of IO. But yeah, lots of strong demand of deals at plus 1 million users, and I expect that to accelerate and not decelerate as we continue to progress down our engineering roadmap.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely expect it to accelerate. You guys are generating all sorts of momentum, building relationships, building the foundation, getting so much more credibility. Everything that's happening there, it's very exciting, man. So thanks for all you're doing. Tell us a little bit more about the ICE group and how does that play into the whole ecosystem? Does that tie in with Catalyst and the Plutus pioneers, and what does that look like?
So what you're sort of touching on is the other half of my strategy. So if you think about it, there's like a top-down approach, which is me running around and designing solutions for governments, right? And then IO will go and build it. And these sort of big ticket things, they bring a lot of press and a lot of credibility, but it's only half of the equation. The other half is sort of instigating and driving the community, right? And solving the problems that are hindering communities from actually building solutions themselves. And one part of that is the developer ecosystem. So we need more developers who can code Cardano smart contracts on Plutus. So ICE role is to coordinate with all of these tech hubs across the continent and to make sure that there are spaces in each country, physical spaces, where people can go to learn how to code on Cardano, learn more about the protocol, and figure out where they fit into that. So they take on a coordination role. But in addition to just community trainings and developer trainings, there's also a need for capital, and that's where two things come in. One is the Catalyst Fund, a place where people can actually apply for funding if it's supporting of Cardano's aims. It's a bit early to sort of talk about it, but we're also looking at a VC model to be able to directly capitalize companies which are either going to build on Cardano or are removing the blockers to adoption. So once you sort of start to add that together, there's physical spaces where I can learn about Cardano, where I can learn code on Cardano. There's a route for capital if, I'm doing something valuable for the ecosystem. And then IO is, putting out all of these online trainings of how you can do Plutus online. Then together, you're creating, I think, quite a good suite of tools to start to drive this community-led adoption that I'm keen to drive. So you add it together. IO comes from the top, does these big deals initially. Community is instigated and supported from the bottom, and then the idea is we'll sort of all meet in the middle. There'll be enough press and publicity about the work that the community is doing that maybe actually IO gets to take a step back about driving these deals themselves. And that's the long-term trajectory, right? We'll need to do less of the adoption driving as the community starts to pick up and to carry that burden.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's a incredible strategy. I think there's a lot happening there. I know you mentioned you can't say too much about the VC fund, but there is something in the works potentially to solve the problem of resource for some of these groups that are going to need funding. Is there anything else you could say about that, or it's just it's not closed yet?
It's not fully cooked. So there's a bunch of things that we need to decide about it. But in my head, one of the ideas that I really like is that we could sort of have this VC entity where potentially like bounties are put up to be able to support people who are going to build and solve problems that we need solved, right? So it sort of fits in and supports Catalyst. You could imagine the idea that we want to be doing lending through the platform towards SMEs in Kenya, right? Where the SMEs are willing to pay a much higher interest rate than you get on a traditional bank account in the US. That's great from the perspective of the person who's got ADA in the US, but also it's going to be half the interest rate of what they're going to earn, of what the SME would be charged in Kenya by other finance providers. So we might say something like, okay, this is really cool, but we need some method to be able to hedge that currency risk. You've got Kenyan shilling and ADA, and someone could go and build something that does that for this sort of flow of money. And they could win a bounty for solving that problem, and then there would be this pot of VC capital available to invest in them if they wanted to create a company. So I sort of got it in my head that this is a really interesting model where we sort of link it up with Catalyst, but we put up bounties for people that are solving problems, which if solved is going to accelerate the ecosystem. And then there's traditional financing through this VC model if they want it. So it all starts to sort of sync together, and that's basically the idea. Once we've got it fully cooked, and it's all agreed internally, then we'll post about it on the Cardano Africa website. But yeah, at the moment there's still quite a few things for us to work out, but I think you can see why it would be useful, in terms of what I've just described.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredibly useful. And you've talked a lot of strategy and resource, and the top-down approach with IOHK, the bottom-up approach with the community, etc. So what? And we're also talking about an entire continent here, right? So many different countries. What's been the biggest problem in terms of implementing strategy or the biggest lesson that you've learned along the way? Where you've had to, change courses or solve a problem uniquely?
Well, I suppose because obviously it's a large continent and it's a very diverse continent. There's really not homogeneity when it comes towards the problems you need to solve. Of course, there are tropes, but there's a lot of detail basically is what I'm saying. So trying to figure out what's the right way to have physical presences where you need to be able to service, sub-regions, but without going too overboard and suddenly creating this behemoth organization where you've got offices everywhere and the management overhead becomes really high. And suddenly IO would be drifting away from sort of what it's meant to be doing and becoming a little bit too much too operational. So I sort of come up with this hub and spoke model. So we'll have a bit more capacity laid down in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Ghana, in Nigeria, and South Africa, and sort of from there we'll service the surrounding countries to be able to sort of give us a spread across where we need to be. The other thing, which is definitely be a challenge, is building products that work for adverse markets. What I'm saying is, if there's no internet or the internet's incredibly expensive, if you've got a large percentage of your population which is using feature phones rather than smartphones, how do you start to integrate with these things when we're building all these blockchain solutions? And the answer is there are many things you can do, but you need to build them, and you need to build them sensibly. I'll give you an example here, but someone was running a big biometric registration pilot for smallholder farmers in Ethiopia. And they were like, okay, we're going to register every farmer's fingerprints, and then they'll be able to log in and authenticate to government and banking. But something like 40% of these farmers have actually worn away their fingerprints in manual labor. So doing the registration process, you've got no ability to actually register that finger. And this is the kind of thing that you don't learn unless you're really getting into the weeds. So it's not just about us building conceptually great products, but building products that really work for these markets. And for that, you need a lot of depth and local knowledge. So that's also been something that has been a learning curve for me. I'm actually setting up a strategy consulting team here in Addis, where the initial team is coming from working at the Agricultural Transformation Agency. So they really understand these problems. So yeah, one of the ways that I've tried to deal with this is to create my own brain trust of people who really understand the realities and the pragmatics that you need to understand if you're going to build successful solutions. So yeah, there's always many challenges, but they're never boring, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I would imagine they're not, and that's great. Sounds like you're getting a lot of essential wisdom and understanding to really make this happen. Have there been many challenges from country to country in terms of how they operate, or has that been an issue at all? Or
yeah, I mean, it's a big continent, right? And as a result, I think I found interest, or at least enough interest to be able to fill up our capacity up till this point without necessarily really struggling. But now, as we've seen some success, and I'm trying to think about, how do I really make this work on a continental scale? Then you run into a variety of challenges, not the least of which is language.
Right.
You need to be able to support just in terms of if I can add French as a core capacity, you're adding a ton of countries, and then Portuguese has its own. And then, of course, if you're starting to do Swahili. And anyway, the point is there's an unlimited number of languages that you might want to have team members that can speak, but that's not going to work either. So you need to start bringing in the right language talent and optimizing for that. So yeah, there's always challenges. But, I think we've been quite strategic on how we can, get the right number of countries, have the right number of language skills. And that's an effort that we're pushing forward on at the moment. So I think in 6 months, I'll feel a bit more comfortable about our solution to that problem.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've got a tremendous strategy in place, and you're dealing with an entire continent. You're heading up the operations. You mentioned the hub and spoke model. What does the team and your org chart look like for executing this strategy?
So what we've done at IO is, so I lead on the sort of pre-sales work and on working very tightly with our product team, make sure that we're building the right thing. Mm-hmm. And then after a contract is signed, what we'll have is local project managers and local deployment engineers to be able to actually run and implement that project. Currently, what we have is that delivery team is managed by an international delivery competency. What we're shifting towards, though, is that over time, even the delivery is managed in and of itself locally as well. So this is a localization model, which is quite classic, actually, when it comes to international companies doing market entry in Africa, something that we're quite keen for. Even if initially some of the management is done internationally, our aim is always to bring that back home and make sure that you have basically a full suite of from like pre-sales towards delivery, which can all be managed by that local office. So that's sort of what we do. We always make sure that we maintain the quality of our work by having this sort of best practice international delivery competency, but over time they get to hand over towards local assets. And I think it's a model that works. And it's also really important, if you're trying to win a big government enterprise project, one of the things that ministers and PMs want to see is that you're doing knowledge transfer and that you're actually investing in the country which you're building for. And that's something which IO has done from the very beginning, and it's something that we'll continue to do.
That's great. That's great. How many are on the team?
So by the end of this year, the Addis office is going to be 30, and we'll be adding maybe another 10 for the additional countries as a sort of skeleton staff to sort of kick us off there. So we always want to be lean. Having too many people, I don't think actually creates more efficiencies. So yeah, that's sort of what we go for. A quality over quantity approach.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of wisdom to that. So you mentioned something recently on Twitter, and I don't know if you could talk about this any further, but if you could shed any more light onto the tweet that you'd sent saying that there was you had some great coffee and closed a 1 million, or you're working on a 1 million user deal. Is there any more light you could shed on what that is and what it's for?
I can't give specifics. I think it's a bad idea to put more pressure on myself than I have to. So
Sure.
until contracts are signed, I
Yeah.
don't think it's necessary. What I will say though is that with smart contracts finally coming out, I'm very, very, very interested in making sure we're building the right tooling for applications around remittances and applications around open finance. So these are sort of microloans and uncollateralized loans. So a lot of the work I'm doing is trying to make sure that we're building the right products so that, you know, a year down the line, you may not even realize it, but Cardano could be the back end financial rails for these huge businesses, and you know the customer won't even know. So that's sort of for me what I'm pushing towards, and a lot of my deal flow is around trying to make sure that we understand these sectors and these industries by working with top tier marquee partners who we can do a pilot with, learn the ropes, learn what's missing from the Cardano solution at the moment, and then bake it in so that we're ready to, you know, hit that big distribution and exponential scale that happens if you really hit product market fit.
Okay. Well, I remember you mentioned something about remittances in a tweet maybe a couple of weeks ago. I think it was indicating the nature of the size of the problem or the potential there. Could you speak a little more to that?
Yeah, I mean, sub-Saharan Africa basically has double the cost of any remittance payment out of other regions in the world. And those figures I shared actually, you know, which puts the cost of a remittance transaction at around, you know, 12%. That's actually not including intermediaries who can drive it up even further. In addition to that, 50% of all remittance in Africa is going towards Nigeria. So, you know, if you're talking about what a remittance play looks like in Africa, you should probably be looking at something around Nigeria and driving down those costs. So for me, I think, you know, with stable coins, with second layer scaling solutions like Hydra. So what's that then? You know, 1 million transactions per second at 0 fees with the ability to move into a local stable asset. So it can be held directly on someone's phone, maybe even integration with payment and merchant services. So they don't need to even cash out into mobile money and incur a charge. You've built a very compelling remittance solution, you know, 0 fees, instant, and no need to move off chain. Like that for me is sort of end game when it comes towards what a great remittance solution would look like. So it's really about trying to prepare for that. You know, Hydra, second layer scaling solutions, they're coming. They're not going to be here immediately, but as we start to build out that protocol, which is what we're doing at the moment, I want to make sure that these business requirements are being incorporated by the teams. And that's sort of the stage which we're at now. So that when we're ready for the Hydra unboxing, it can do something really, really rather remarkable.
Yeah, that's very exciting. So are you guys talking to Liquid Finance at all about any of that?
Yeah, Liquid Finance, I've spoken to a few times. I know the team is as well. I think we're very positive about what they're doing and excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing project. Be cool to see that you guys linking up to solve some problems. Well, you also mentioned that remittances are primarily an issue in Nigeria, which happens to be very, at least from what I've read, very crypto savvy, and they're really coming along in that regard. Is that helping generate any traction there for you?
So Nigeria is a hot market if you're talking about this kind of stuff. A lot of the venture capital activity and technology across the continents happen there. I think it's the second largest market for purchasing BTC outside of the United States, and that's globally. But you know, there's been some vacillation on a top government level about whether or not they want to support it. And this is typical. We've seen this in many countries. You know, we hate crypto, we love crypto, we hate crypto. So the central bank did close down the bank accounts of businesses that were involved in cryptocurrency. From what I've seen, they're trying to basically backtrack on that a bit more. And I think it's become quite trendy at the moment to be, as a nation state, saying you're going to endorse crypto. I mean, as I say, with El Salvador and Tanzania now, we're starting to see that zeitgeist shift. So yeah, you know, for me, yes, there's challenges there, but Nigeria is a huge market. There's a lot of adoption there already. So I think we'd be remiss to not have it as part of our strategy focus.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. It's good that you got an eye on the ball, man. So Last question for you, man. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. But what are you most excited about in terms of everything that's happening in Africa, in terms of your job? What excites you the most?
I mean, we've finally got smart contracts coming out, and and that's a game changer for the kinds of applications which I'm excited for. You know, for me, economic identity, right? Well, we're talking about digital identity plus a suite of financial actions which can happen on top of that, right? And this is the loans, this is the open finance, this is the uncollateralized debt. So this kind of stuff. And I can't do that without smart contracts. So for me, you know, what's really exciting is that come Q1 of next year, I can start really building for this sort of financial enfranchisement, banking the unbanked. You know, it's the mission statement of the company. And whilst it starts with identity, you also need the rest to come as well. And post smart contracts, that's a possibility. So yeah, I'm excited. You know, for me, next year is really delivering on Cardano's mission year for IO, and I can't wait to see what we achieve together.
All right, man. That's exciting. Very exciting. Smart contracts, obviously a huge milestone for Cardano and for what you're doing in Africa. So can't wait to see how all of this unfolds. I know I said last question, but one final question. How do I get some Ethiopian Sodoma coffee?
So
you tweeted about it, so I got to try it, you know?
You do. You got to try it. It's lovely. It's a very rich coffee. You know, if you're in the US, there's like a huge diaspora Ethiopian community. So I'd be very surprised if you can't find it in your local Costco or whatever American supermarkets are called, which I can't remember. Yeah. But go down to an American supermarket, and I'd be very surprised if you can't find some. The Harari coffee as well is also very good. So if you can't find Sodoma, don't be too upset. Any Ethiopian coffee, some of the best in the world. So you can't go that far wrong.
Awesome, man. Thank you for the recommendation. I'll give it a shot. Again, thanks for taking your time, John. Good luck out there, and we'll look forward to having you on the show again at some point, maybe in 6 months or so, to see how things are going.
Pleasure, Josh. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the call.
Have a good evening.
Take care.
You too.